Hi, everybody. Welcome. I always try to fit too much stuff into the 20-minute block that FossASIA gives me. So we're going to rush. Know that the slides are available on the talk description on the website. And I will be upstairs available at the booth, the Elma Linux booth, all today and all tomorrow. So you can find me there if you have questions. We'll start with this, the very basic. Nobody's here to hear my story, I don't think, so I'm not going to tell it. Know that I've been around in tech and open source for a while. Know that I am kind of a dork, and that's pretty much all you need to know. If you have questions, you can find me after, or you can find me upstairs. You can send me an email. You can find me on the socials. I'm around. It's fine. With the short block that we've got, I don't have time to convince you of all of the things for my thesis of this talk, so I'm going to start with some assumptions. First one, ooh, that was amazing. Did you guys see that? I mean, I promised to run through it, didn't I? First one, marketing is necessary. If you are here, I'm going to assume that you already are understanding that there is a time and a place for open source to do some kind of marketing effort. Number two, your project is useful. I'm going to assume that if it was useful for you, it's probably useful for other people, and it's worth talking about with the other people in the public. Make sure that if you are doing something that has already been done, that you're doing it for more than a reason that is just, I want to write, I wanted to learn how to code in whatever language better, or I wanted to do this. When you start publicizing, there has to be a reason for it to exist. So keep that in mind. I'm also assuming that you're here because for you, the word marketing is uncomfortable or weird or makes you feel like it's not going to be as much fun. Know that marketing often has this negative association because the majority of marketing is actually advertising, and we all feel very icky about advertising. Advertising intentionally tries to trick you or persuade you into doing something that you don't necessarily want to do, or buying something or being something that you don't have to be. That's not what we're here for. We're not doing any of that. Number four, you have already chosen open source. This is not a conversation about whether you're going to be closed source or open source. I'm assuming you've already chosen open source. And if you have any doubts about why that is, then we can talk about it later. Number five, you are already ready to accept feedback. If you're going to be sharing a project in the public, you have to know that that will invite opinions and ideas and suggestions and criticism and hate and love and all of the things that come with putting an idea in the public. If you are not ready to accept feedback, then I strongly can recommend that you consider whether or not you actually want to do open source, because you're going to have a bad time. It's not going to be fun. There's other options that we can talk about. If you're in that boat, just come find me and we can talk about it. The other assumption is that this is an ideal scenario. In real life, most of the time, you don't get the time to plan this out and consider and decide what you're going to do before you get started. The outline that I provide it's not a judgment against anyone who hasn't done this. It's not a statement that anyone's doing anything wrong if they haven't done this. It is simply, we are in an ideal scenario. You have a project that you've started to write or have written that you want to start marketing, and there's nobody really there yet. So that's where you're at there. I also promised a pre-flight or pre-launch checklist for you to give. So here's that checklist real quick. Number one, define your goal. I am going to heavily lean on this. When you start doing marketing efforts, you need to define what your efforts are going to, what they're aiming toward. Are you trying to bring in contributors? Are you trying to bring in users? Are you trying to bring in people who will do code reviews? Are you trying to bring in something else entirely? if you've got a goal in mind, then that will drive all of the efforts and make everything a lot more focused for you as you get through it. Number 2, I'm gun shy with this button now. Maybe we'll do that. There we go. Number 2, put your code in the public. You would be surprised by how many people miss this part. Your code has to be in a place that is public and that people can easily submit feedback, pull requests, suggestions, ideas, anything like that. And if you are not ready for feedback and suggestions and ideas, then I refer you back to assumption number 5. It's not time for you yet. Number 3, get an OSI license. Pick one. The OSI is the open source initiative. They are the ones that steward the definition of open source. Pick a license from their website. There's another website that I list there called Choose a License. It helps you walk through all of them that are available, so you pick the one that's right for you. I do not recommend choosing anything that is not blessed by the OSI as an open source license. We can get into a debate about that, so I'll just leave that one there. And then when you're accepting feedback, when you're there, that means that people are going to come give it to you. If you do not define how you want that feedback to be given to you, then they will decide for you. You'll get emails, you'll get issues, you'll get tweets, you'll get whatever. Make sure that when you want that feedback to be delivered, it's given in a way that is both sustainable and something that you're going to be able to keep up with. So if you, for better or for worse, if you define, I want people to email me their suggestions, then as your project grows, your inbox will overflow. That's something to consider. So just define how you want it to be and put it in your project very clearly so that anybody that finds your project knows exactly how to give you feedback. And as part of number 4, you're going to want to define how and where people go, how you are going to disseminate information. So if you're posting a newsletter on GitHub, they know how to watch for that. If you are sending out a newsletter on email, they know how to watch for that. However, you're going to announce stuff, define that, and then define where people will gather to give you feedback. Like I said, if it's issues, that's fine. If it's a Mattermost chat, wherever you want to put people, make sure that that's defined, because if you don't, again, they will make it up. They will find a way to give you feedback. And so now we're getting to the meat of it, because we've got that little checklist. Essentially, what you're going to be doing next is building awareness, and that awareness almost always comes from talking about it. You are going to be sharing in general how your project solves the problem that you had, the thing that you encountered. This first step is my favorite, because if you have built a group of friends around you that are your champions, they're going to be interested in what you're doing, but it also feels a little bit awkward, right? Like, it's hard to tell people that you care about things that might not be relevant to them. But if it's relevant to them, they're going to be excited. Even if it's not relevant to them, they're going to be excited that you've done a thing. So start by telling the people that are closest to you. This one is kind of default for almost every type of marketing effort. You talk about it in the public space. These things tend to cause people hesitation because the immediate question is, what do I talk about? Here's the cool thing. You've already got a goal that we defined in the pre-flight checklist. So the goal drives what you're going to be building. If you want contributors, then you talk about the things that are kind of broken, the things you think can be improved, the things you want to welcome contributions about. If you want code reviews, you talk about how the things that are coming in are not quite what you want, or something along that line. If you want, I gotta scroll through my notes. If you want users, you talk about the cool things that people are doing with your project, or the things that could be done with your projects, or the things that you want to be done with your project, things that you are setting up. Whatever you focus on, whatever goal you've defined, focus on that as you're building this content. And I include both vlog and blog because written and video content reaches different audiences. So even if you're duplicating the content, if you're talking about the same thing in both places, it will hit different people. What did I do there? Ah, there's a black screen button. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Podcasts have taken off, especially in the last 5 years, but certainly in the last 20 since they started. It is an important place to, again, get a different audience. And then it's more of a conversation instead of you just talking into the void, which is what happens with both vlogs and blogs. When you start reaching out to any podcasts that you are interested in sharing that you think is the right place to share, the thing I want you to keep in mind is reach out in a way that is appropriate for that audience. So you're going to approach, I'm gonna blank on all of them right now, but make sure you're listening to the podcasts that you think are interesting. Talk to the ones that you think are interesting first. If you're not listening to any podcasts, don't reach out yet. Start listening, pick ones that are interesting to you, and hear how the conversations go so you know how to frame what you're doing so that their audience will be interested. That's the best way to set yourself up for success there. And the thing that will influence whether or not you're successful when reaching out to podcasts is whether or not you are a fan. If you're a fan, that gets you a way to start the conversation. Like, I'm a longtime listener. I love this podcast because I like this meme that you guys have, or I like this joke that you always make, or I really liked this episode and it made me think your audience might also be interested in this cool thing I'm doing. Relevant places. Aha, this one gets me. So there is a fine line to walk between talking about the things that, or between sharing the thing that you have done in a place that is relevant and spamming. There is this newsletter. If you write stuff in Rust or if you do stuff in the Rust space, this newsletter accepts blog posts and videos and conferences and everything related to Rust in general. So if you are writing a project in Rust and you learned a cool thing as you were building it, write a blog post, make a video, submit it to this newsletter. You're going to find, I am certain, there are other places just like that for other languages or other groups, other anything. There are places that are relevant without causing that negative emotion, because none of us like to be spammed. None of us just want to see, hey, check out my cool project. It is a fine line, and you don't want your project associated with those negative emotions. So keep an eye out there. This work will take time and effort before you see results. There's always the chance that you're going to catch somebody's interest and you're going to rise to the top of all the noise because somebody big cares about it. Don't expect that to happen, and don't expect it to keep happening if it does happen. You have to keep this effort up, and that is the only way that you're going to continue to grow whatever it is that you're trying to grow. There are a couple other things that I want to make sure we think about when you're starting to grow your anything. Right now, marketing, it is very, very hot to use AI, both in content generation and in graphic design and that kind of stuff. You are going to set yourself up for, I swear it works half the time. You're going to set yourself up for an interesting discussion as you start to use AI. If you lean on it too much, you are going to end up, let's just put it this way. AI doesn't tell you what's true. It tells you what's likely. So if you are using it to write blog content, you're going to end up in a situation where you put something out that is wrong. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that it's fact-checked and it's correct. Always, always, always use it with caution. For example, if you're writing a blog post, use it to build an outline. Don't use it to write the entire blog post. It can be a tool without being a thing that causes you strife. To CLA or not CLA? CLA is a contributor license agreement. So you typically will see recommendations for how you deal with contributing code and how you make sure that you maintain ownership of it. You want to be very careful with this, especially because most of the time that I see it used by companies who have an open source product that they are selling, and they want to make sure that they maintain ownership of the code. So if you're going to use a CLA, be very, very clear about why you're using it. And I think we're going to make it in our 20-minute block. So we've flown through all of this. And like I said, the slides are available online. You can get them there. I have these 2 wrap-up slides to give you everything that you need. The value of your work and your project right here defines or is worth the extra effort at the beginning to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed halfway through. Use this ahead of time to set yourself up for success. When you get to this work, know that this kind of work will take, like I said, 6 to 12 months before you see consistent results of it. And it's going to be a forever thing, not just a today thing. Keep this work going and you will see adoption as long as all of the assumptions are true, right? There's a couple more pieces of advice that I can't help but give because of who I am and because of what I've seen in open source. If your project is open and good and gets feedback and gets users, you are going to end up in a situation where people will come with opinions and love and hate and suggestions and criticism and all of the things that make it wonderful and hard to work in open source. It is your job to meet those things with humility and grace, no matter the opinion and no matter how it's presented. You can say you're coming too aggressively and push and say, we're not going to do that in this space, but make sure that you're not meeting them with aggression. It will improve your project overall. Have fun with it. If you're not having fun, it's time to step back. It's time to step away. If not every day will be amazing, but do not stick around past when it is consistently fun. If you don't hold yourself to that line, you're going to become a bad steward. Find a partner of some kind. That can be a mentor, that can be somebody else that's active in the same space that can give you ideas. Having a conversation with other people on a regular basis about your project will make it so much easier to brainstorm about content ideas, to come up with new features and new ideas about how to implement what you're doing. Just bounce it off somebody else. Find a partner that is willing to have that conversation with you on a regular basis. Take care of yourself. Open source can be very, very hard and grueling. It can also be super rewarding. Do not let this one go. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten that you probably won't be able to read. Whenever you feel like everyone hates you, sleep. Whenever you feel like you hate everyone else, eat. And whenever you feel like you hate yourself, take a shower. Always, always keep those in mind. Thank you, FossASIA, for having me. Thanks, everybody, for attending. I hope it was great.
Anyone have any questions?
When do I what? Oh, when you decide to start presenting at conferences. I didn't even get to that one, did I? So the goal with this presentation was very baseline, very like anybody can do it from anywhere. If you can start to get people to pay you to go to conferences, you have made it. Like that's amazing. If you're going to be spending your own money to do it, you have to make sure that you're not bankrupting yourself. Don't do that. But also, like, legitimately, if you've got a community that's that excited, you can get help. Find somebody that will help you and it'll happen.